Explain to the people what it is.
Basically, because of the way that we draft and like this zero RB strategy and some people taking running backs, et cetera, like rounds 4 through 7 can be this really interesting like mishmash of things where it's a lot of upside, or it can be like maybe they're going the other direction too. So you can find some real diamonds in the rough here. And that's the key to getting through your whole fantasy season, especially because, you know, I'm an analytics person here. I'm going to tell you that running back position is not secure, baby. Not at all.
Yeah, and I did a draft where I went running back with my first 2 picks. I didn't care for it too much. I just didn't like the team as much as I would have liked had I just taken, make sure you get a wide receiver for one of those first 2 picks, and then in the 4th through 7th round, you go back and you find one of these diamonds in the rough, as they call them.
Yeah, so often it happens. People take running backs in this range, and it absolutely does not pan out, and there's wide receivers later on. But if we do target running backs here in the dead zone, 4 through 7 rank, who do we target?
Well, there's a number of players that I've been looking at over the last couple of weeks, including Raheem Mostert, Zamir White, DeAndre Swift is another one, too. And we see the list right there. I want to explain one thing, because I know over the weekend I was posting a lot of the teams that I was drafting, and I had Zamir White in the 5th round of one of my drafts, and people were really questioning why I would do, it's early, like the ADP of the guys, of the sharps and whatever. Like, that stuff doesn't matter when you're actually in your draft, because the team I was drafting for starts 2 running backs and 2 receivers, which means in the 5th round is when you need to target another running back, which is why I might have drafted him a little bit early, but I don't think it's outlandish. I mean, Zamir White was a bell cow running back for the Raiders at the end of last season. I've talked to people who've been at Raiders camp, who know what the Raiders want to do, and they told me, and we talked about this last week after he played in the 3rd preseason game, or the 3rd quarter of a preseason game, he is going to be the bell cow of that running back, of that team. DeAndre Swift is another player that I'm going to be targeting in drafts. It goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about how he lost out on a ton of end zone opportunities last season because the Eagles were using the brotherly shove. He got tackled on the 1-yard line 6 times. That cannot be overstated. That's a fluke. That is not going to happen again. I think that when he gets near the goal line this year, the Bears will give him an opportunity to go in and punch those in.
All right, and Cynthia, if you're looking at guys in the dead zone, who's safer?
Well, we already talked about some of my favorite ones in Nick Chubb. I told you that, and just remember it's for later. And I also like Austin Eckler, too. But I want to talk about a little bit of petty, and that is Aaron Jones. If you get unceremoniously traded in your division after this other guy from the Raiders comes over, you're going to be mad. And remember last year, we're sitting here drafting him in the 1st round very often of our fantasy. What happened? Nothing. He's still that same guy. In fact, with Sam Darnold there, truther or not truther, they still need to run the football. A little bit more balance is better for everyone. They're going to rely on the run game. And you know what it's going to be? It's going to be Aaron Jones, especially in those wonderful Minnesota versus Green Bay games. And last but not least, Tony Pollard. Guys, do we forget about him? What's he doing down there?
I don't know.
Why is he so low? Do you know who's a really good O-line coach? The guy there in Tennessee.
Callahan.
The last name of Callahan is synonymous with O-lines. If you're running behind that O-line, you have a great opportunity. It's all about yak and ability to be elusive. And you know what Tony Pollard has shown us when he was a Cowboy? Very elusive. So that you can thank Callahan. There's like definitely a Adam Sandler reference there, but I'm not going to go there. We're good.
Chris Farley.
Chris Farley. Okay. Same thing.
Ultimately, right, in the dead zone, the reason we call it the dead zone is because there's a lot of not success there. But somebody every single year is going to really blow up in the dead zone. And when that happens, it looks a lot like the numbers you see right here, because Kyren Williams was the RB 72 off the board last year. Lock solid there in the dead zone. What did he do? First in touches per game, yards per game, second in scrimmage yards per game. He was very, very good. You're not getting Kyren Williams in the dead zone this year at all. So, Cynthia, who's this year's Kyren Williams?
I'm looking at Chase Brown. Obviously, opportunity seems to be knocking for him. And if you look at the end of last season, it's like it was this like mini audition for him, because he had 10 or more touches in 3 of the last 5 games in 2023 after 0 times of that happening in the first 7 games. And you can go on NFL Pro and you get that new tool, which is actually really awesome. And you can see that he reached a top speed of 22.1 miles per hour. That was the highest among running backs, which means he found an open lane, he got going, he got ahead of steam, and he ran 22 miles an hour, which is crazy. I also think the opportunity there is great.
I am looking right across the street from us, and it is a rookie running back that went to the beautiful campus of Troy University. That is Kamani Vidal. Yes, my alma mater's all-time leading rusher. That doesn't just have everything to do with that. It's the fact that Jim Harbaugh, the last time he was in the NFL, top 4 in rush percentage in 3 of 4 seasons in San Francisco. He's got Greg Roman as his offensive coordinator. The Chargers are going to run the ball, and the 2 former Ravens backs that are in this backfield with him both dealt with injuries. He kind of fills a role in between what both of them do. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Kamani Vidal here in 2023.
You know, I'm glad you finally got an opportunity to talk about him because I'm usually the first one of the homework, and I love talking about Kamani Vidal. But that's a great, I mean, all the points that Patrick made are absolutely correct. I also like Trey Benson down in Arizona. Again, when you look at the running backs who are starting in front of him, I know everybody loves Blake Corum, but like Kyren Williams was last year's Kyren Williams for a reason. Trey Benson is going to be playing with James Conner, who's played in 13 or fewer games in 5 of his 7 career seasons. And they bring in a guy like Benson, who had 15 rushing touchdowns in 13 games last season at Florida State. He's got the skills. He is somebody that could go out there, and especially with a quarterback like Kyler Murray, be really proficient. So I really love his opportunity. And let's take a look at some other players. And these, of course, are the rookies that you need to familiarize yourself with. You need to come away with at least one of these players in your fantasy draft. I'm not saying that all of them are going to hit. None of them could hit. But remember, last year, when you're drafting in the 12th round, we're taking speculative picks. Yeah, you could draft Devin Singletary. Why not take the upside with Tyrone Tracy? Like, I would be much more confident with that. And we did it last year with guys like Sam Laporta, Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams, you know, a perfect example of this. Now, I've drafted plenty of Josh Fergusons in my life, and you'd be like, who is that? Exactly. But I would still rather take the risk in those later rounds than taking somebody who might be a household name, somebody you might have heard of. Go for the rookie.
Yeah, how often do you really need that kicker, that defense?
Yeah.
Shoot for the moon, because you may land on a cloud.